I'm mildly conflicted about how much time I want to waste on addressing this last hiatus. I personally hate when videos have a lot of unrelated nonsense, so I'm going to rush through this. Yeah, this year has been kind of rough for me. I've lost several important people to me to various things, including a surprisingly young passing due to an illness that he did not share that he had with others. That's his own business. It's whatever. I'm not going to go into any real detail except say, check in on your friends. Tell important people that you love them, and please enjoy your life while you can. All of that being said, I'm just going to try to get back into the swing of things. We're going to do something new this week, before we start getting back to series like Tomie, Ju-on, Ringu, all of those. Just a fun little one-off called The Booth, which can be seen for free on YouTube. The Booth is a thriller more than a horror, as there's very little to actively be scared of, but instead it draws you in with its storytelling, visuals, and sound work. It tries to lead you to a conclusion before making you question everything that you thought led you to the conclusion. It tells a story about Shingo, a late-night radio DJ who hosts a Love Line talk show, and the topic tonight is people seeking advice on how to deal with insults/criticisms that were told to them by the people they love. However, tonight's show is also coming from Booth 6, an old rundown booth with a sordid past, including an old host who seemingly took his own life during a show. As Shingo and his team deal with the increasingly unusual happenings causing problems with the show, Shingo is dealing with his own problem, which will be revealed throughout the movie. Is the booth actually haunted? Does it know about Shingo's past? Does his team see the truth in front of them? All of these are questions that are explored, leading to twists and turns before the show goes off the air. Again, this movie is entirely free on YouTube with subtitles, so please check it out when you have a chance. All of the prep work is over and done with, so let's put on our headphones, adjust our mics, hit the on-air sign, and watch what happened in the booth. We started an unspecified date in the past, with a radio host taking a call from a lady who's having trouble with a young tenant in her home. They're in love and want to get married, but his parents won't approve of it. So, they've decided that to be together, they must pass away together. The host tries to dissuade her from this, but the lady informs them that they've already performed the act. Roughly 30 years ago, in fact. The problem is that the guy didn't go through with it like she did. She then accuses the host of betraying her, as music and static fills the call. The studio workers begin working to fix the call, and the host begins to panic as the caller informs him that she's nearby. Before anyone can stop him, the host has taken his own life in the booth, and as the producer runs to get help, we jump ahead to the present day. We join Shingo as he arrives to work, but his studio is empty, and one of his producers arrives to tell him that they'll be broadcasting out of booth 6 in the basement. As he tosses to the first song of the night, he asks for a new pair of headphones, as the ones he has irritate his skin, before commenting on how old the equipment is. But the producer assures him that she can handle it. She learned on this equipment, after all. As they prepare to come back, Shingo finds a classic rotary phone, the same phone used in the beginning, in the studio and places it to his ear. It doesn't seem to have any sound, but he's entranced by it all the same, before the show knocks him back to reality. His first calls from a 6th grader, going by the name of Nasty. She tells the story about how a classmate was going to move away, so she planned to confess her feelings to him, and he said to her, "Stop staring, ugly," and hurt her. Shingo attempts to bond with the caller by telling her that he had moved a lot when he was a kid, which we actually see is true via a flashback. He then, however, says that he was a late bloomer, who had no interest in girls, and they definitely didn't like him. But this is shown to be a lie by the flashback, where he seems to have had a girlfriend in grade school. He tries to comfort the caller, though, by telling her that boys often have trouble expressing their feelings, and he probably liked her too. But the call is interrupted by an odd rhythmic creaking sound, and a soft whispered accusation before the sound of crashing waves. The caller comes back and expresses thanks before they hang up and go to commercial. It's during that commercial that Shingo learns about the booth's past and alleged haunting within it. He even notices a cord in the ceiling that would be perfect for performing the act. His assistant enters the booth though and informs Shingo that the caller had called him a liar during the interruption. I want to take this moment to note that his assistant speaks very oddly. He holds his hand in front of his mouth like he's holding a microphone. I don't know why he does this. I assume it's something to do with the radio. Maybe it's to keep the mic from picking him up, and he just does it out of habit. Maybe it's just a tick. I don't know. I just noticed it when I was watching it here, and it's weird. Anyway, Shingo comes back with another caller. This one is called Momo, and she just recently got married. This would be good news, but she was told by her husband that he should have married his ex. She's not really upset about it, though, as he and her had been engaged when she seduced him out from under her. The story is interrupted, though, by Shingo's flashback to working with a news reporter named Mabuchi. They had had a dinner date, and Shingo seems to want to continue the relationship, but she doesn't seem as enthused. They do end up going out again that night, but she ducks in Shingo's car to hide from her fiancé driving by. This seems to anger Shingo, who proceeds to aggressively kiss her in the car as we cut back to the show. Shingo is trying to defend Momo when the squeaking interrupts the call again. He tries to work through it, but a voice on the line calls him a liar before the crashing sounds return. Afterwards, Momo returns and Shingo tries to reassure her one more time before the call ends. They move on to another caller called Kong Ming. He has a crush on someone at work and was talking her up at a bar when we smash cut to Mabuchi calling Shingo a liar, and when we come back he's missed the whole story. Apparently while they were talking, a co-worker jutted in with a comment about how bad his breath was in front of her. The story is then cut off when Mabuchi accuses Shingo of cheating on her. Shingo remarks that he's not, but they're clearly not good for each other, so they should break up. Mabuchi calls him a liar the same way that the voice that keeps interrupting calls has been. Shingo is then brought back to the present when the caller accuses him of not listening to him, before remarking that the voice keeps calling him a liar. Shingo throws to a song to cut off the call, and while it plays, he's informed that Mabuchi is missing. We jump back to the past where Mabuchi is still accusing him of having an affair, to which Shingo calls her pathetic. This angers Mabuchi and she begins attacking him. He kicks her, literally out of his car, and she hits her head on a guardrail, leaving a bloody print behind. In the present, Shingo is offered the idea of switching to a horror theme for the night to capitalize on the interruptions, but he refuses. When the show comes back, he begins reading emails, the first of which remarks on this creaking sound, saying that it sounds like a metal gate creaking, which Shingo mentally connects with a rusted weather vane that was at the scene of his fight with Mabuchi. The next email comments on the voice, but Shingo tries to brush it off. And when the next suggests that it's specifically targeted at him, he comments that everyone can hear it though. Him, the staff, the listeners, so it can't just be for him. The next email then points out they hear the clatter of a cell phone chain, so it's probably a cell phone calling in. Shingo remembers the chain that was on Mabuchi's phone, and how it would knock against her phone when she would be on calls. Shingo tires of these emails and wants one that's on topic about romance, but his assistant struggles to find one. He decides to throw to a song, and once they do, reaffirms that he doesn't want to do a horror show. When Shingo is informed that there are no emails about the topic, he tells the staff to make some up, and they seem uncomfortable with the idea. This is interrupted though when they introduce Mabuchi's replacement, since they can't find her. Her replacement seems nervous, asking Shingo how Mabuchi usually does the segment before revealing that she's still in training. She then continually asks questions, which Shingo brushes off, but when she starts praising Mabuchi, Shingo snaps. It's just the news. It's unimportant. This seems to take the wind out of her sails. She does eventually snap back and begin reading the news about a typhoon hitting Japan, but while she does, Shingo sees Mabuchi in the production office, but nobody else seems to, and she disappears quickly. This is then compounded when it's reported that a female body was found on the beach fully clothed. Shingo remembers back to the breakup where Mabuchi was not killed by the guardrail, tried to get back into his car, and Shingo drove off in a panic. Unfortunately, Mabuchi's clothes were caught on the car, and she was dragged through the dirt and rocks before being freed and falling into the ocean. Back in the booth, Okazaki, the reporter lady, presses him on the lady's body based on his offhand comment that it was scary how violent people are before the segment ends. Shingo is increasingly stressed, snapping at the producers for never getting him headphones before the next caller is patched through. She tells a story about her superiors at work talking about her, calling her gloomy to be around. The visual for this is actually not a Shingo flashback, so at least that's not damning for him. Shingo does kind of dismiss this call, first because he doesn't think it's that bad, second it's not a love story, and finally he just kind of calls her a paranoid lady, which everyone seems surprised by. The next caller tells a story about how when she and her boyfriend were going to a wedding, she thought she was dressed provocatively, and he commented that nobody would look at her anyway, so who cares? Shingo immediately connects this to the comment he made to Okazaki about the news, and he seemingly defends himself to the caller by saying that her boyfriend was just reacting to her fussing, before unceremoniously going to the next caller. This caller wants to talk about the spooky voice, which Shingo shuts down immediately, and incidentally moves back to Kong Ming, the bad breath caller. He asks Shingo for advice about what to do and comments that Shingo being distracted during their call. Shingo tries to placate him, but Kong Ming presses him for some kind of advice. Shingo tells him to just let it go, to which the caller pushes back, suggesting that he should seek some kind of revenge. Shingo tells him that seeking revenge for every single slight would make him a troubled man, which it would, but also starts a small argument that his producers find funny. When he tries to throw to music and comments about how that caller is crazy, the lady on the soundboard turns his mic back on to broadcast that comment. Shingo begins lashing out at everyone, mostly his assistant for setting him up with all these weird callers and emails, before being introduced by their next guest, a chess master. As they prepare, Shingo does remember that he in fact did make those gloomy comments about a coworker, specifically the soundboard operator. He also made a comment about a coworker's breath in front of a girl he liked. His assistant, which is why he covers his mouth when he talks. Shingo also remembers that he once mentioned to his producer that he has sensitive skin, which is why he's been giving these irritating headphones. He comes to the conclusion that everyone is working against him tonight, but the show must go on. It immediately begins with a fumble as he introduces his guest as a grandmaster, only to be informed that he's been recently demoted. The guest does tell an interesting story about his first crush on his teacher when he was in kindergarten, but as he does, we flash back to Mabuchi's fiancé she was hiding from. It was the director of Shingo's show. Bringing him back to reality, two men have entered the studio dressed in suits. We see them find Mabuchi's body, investigate the scene of the fight, and then Shingo's car. Now they stand waiting for him. As he continues talking to his guest, Shingo starts worrying, and the water bottle he's been throwing back is finally hitting him. He really needs to pee, but he decides to hold it since the detectives are in the office waiting for him. Speaking of the office, he sees Mabuchi again, but like last time, she disappears for a moment before reappearing and entering the booth. She takes her seat across from Shingo, fresh wound on her face, which surprisingly is addressed by the assistant. Everyone can see her, and she begins to read the news as normal. We flash back to see that she regained consciousness while in the ocean and made her way to the beach. She was aided by local fishermen before seemingly just going back to the studio for work. Shingo wets himself in response to her presence. He very awkwardly banters with Mabuchi for a second before awkwardly sending to a song. Mabuchi silently leaves the booth, and Shingo is informed that the men in suits are in fact sponsors for the show. A staff member finally shows up with headphones for Shingo, but he waves them off since he doesn't want anyone to know that he wet himself. Trying to distract himself, Shingo makes a pencil golf course before being sent back on the air. He dryly comments on the weather before beginning to sign off for the show. Tomorrow's episode will cover breaking up with someone you still like. However, the creaking returns, but there's nobody on the line. It hit Shingo suddenly. It wasn't the weather vane creaking, it was a swing set. We go all the way back to the first caller, and Shingo's first memory. Himself as a child, spending a day with his girlfriend before moving away. There also seems to be a faint ringing in the background, but I'm not sure if that's just me imagining things or if it's actually there. The caller was a girl in Shingo's class who was seemingly bullied. As she waited to talk to Shingo after school, he was the one who told her stop staring ugly. He then proceeded to take it a step farther and throw a rock at her. As she reacted to it, she fell off a swing and landed badly, bleeding on the floor. The next time we see that girl, her arm is in a sling and her entire face is wrapped in gauze. He looks up to see an older style woman sitting across from him. Then the rotary phone falls out of the closet. The original DJ's final broadcast begins playing again, as Shingo gazes up at the cord that took the DJ's life. The ghostly woman stares him in the eyes, and as Shingo reaches up for the cord, the office throws to a song and tries to break in as the lights go dark in the booth. I really enjoy this movie, and not just because of the story it tells, but because of the questions I had after watching it. Was his affair and attack on Mabuchi part of what incited this attack on Shingo? Was it his attack as a child and the subsequent lie? Was it his lie trying to placate the first caller? Were the callers and misfortunes actually intended by his co-workers? Was it all a setup by the ghost of the booth? Or was it all just a cosmic coincidence that his paranoia and guilt connected to him? The movie does a good job setting up all of these things that seem to make sense at the time of happening, or connect in a way to make you feel satisfied as you're watching it, before turning it all on its head and showing you a new through line. Now, as always, I had to cut out a lot of the character and pacing and all the small things that make a movie great to watch, because I don't want these to be a replacement for watching a movie. I just want it to be something that you can come check out to know if this movie is something you should spend your time on. The Booth is, again, available for free, full, with subtitles, on YouTube. Take the time to check it out if it seems interesting to you. I'll see you again soon. I love you all. Good night.
Maybe you think you're safe. Maybe you're dreaming of